Discover the secrets of 18th century chocolate making, demonstrated in the Governor's Palace kitchen by Colonial Williamsburg foodways historian Jim Gay.
The process of making chocolate begins in the rainforest with a fruit called cacao. Up until this time, nothing tastes like chocolate. The fruit tastes sweet, somewhat like citrus, somewhat like an orange, and the seeds themselves are bitter. We throw away the fruit and we keep the seeds. When the chocolate maker gets the cacao seeds, they have come literally from Central and South America. They were lying on the forest floor, so we'll spread them out and we'll look for debris. We could find rocks, we could find even the bag, the cocoa that this was shipped in. Over time, we'll get it mostly out of here, but when we start roasting it in the later processes, we'll find them and we'll continue to clean them. So the whole process is to try to turn these into as refined a product as possible within the constraints of having to do it by hand. The roasting is probably the most important part of the whole process, because this is where the actual chocolate flavor is developed. We can make analogies to roasting coffee beans in the fact that we can take these chocolate nuts and roast them to a high level of roast, which would be probably equivalent to French roast or Italian roast or espresso. You can actually roast them at a medium level, and that would be where the natural flavor of the fruit is married with the natural flavor of the roast. And then the last way we could have it is frankly a low roast, where you're tasting more of the fruit and less of the chocolate, and sometimes there's advantage of doing that. Yeah, as you can see here, we don't have any temperature lights or any controlled method of determining when enough is enough. We have to listen to it, we have to smell it, and we have to taste it. Can't rush it, can't make it any faster, and I'm going to take all the time in the world to get this part of it right, because if you don't do it, everything else is going to taste with off flavors. There's a little shell around each and every one of these cacao beans that has to come off. It's basically indigestible. And okay, it goes a little bit, not quite enough. So we have to take that shell off too, and that's what's cracking. One of the characteristics of 18th century chocolate is the fact that some beans are over roasted, some beans are under roasted, some beans are just right. But what we're trying to achieve is, you could basically say, a broad average. So after we've hand shelled the cocoa chocolate nuts, we want to winnow them. In other words, get as much of this chaff off as we can. This is a winnowing basket, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but you'll see little bits of chaff fly away. And that chaff actually would be indigestible. So we want to get as much of this off as possible. The cleaner that we can make it, the finer your chocolate is going to be. And that's it. So after the chocolate nuts have been winnowed, what we need to do is pound them down, because we've already done all the cooking we're going to do, and we've done all the cleaning we're going to do, but now it's all about reducing the particle size. The finer I can grind these particles, the more the aroma and the flavor will emerge. Once we've pounded the nibs up in the marble mortar, we'll transfer them to this heated stone called a chocolate stone. And we will grind these carefully on the stone, and as we do, the particle size gets smaller and smaller. The finer I grind it, the more the liquid emerges. That liquid is actually called cocoa butter. So you can start to see it right here. It starts turning into liquid. The longer we grind it, the finer it gets. The more finely we grind it, the less perceptible you can feel it on your tongue. And it has a nice property of melting at mouth temperature like other butter does. So that's why chocolate melts in your mouth. Now you might think that I'm actually rolling this. I'm really not. You'll see me actually slowly grind this back and forth. I want to crush these nibs right against the stone and try to make it as fine as I can. There's no rushing this. It can't be moved along with at least by hand. However, what your Europeans quickly realized that this kind of action can easily be translated to a rotary mill. So imagine, if you will, chocolate mills in the larger cities, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, with water mills running rotating stones being pushed along by water power. And that's how a chocolate maker could go from 3 or 4 ounces of nibs like we have here into 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 pounds all at the same time, eventually making several thousand pounds a day. So Americans in the 18th century, actually most of their chocolate wasn't handmade like this, it was machine made, which made it less expensive for a lot of people. Chocolate wasn't something that's exclusively an aristocrat's product in the 18th century, at least in North America. It was actually distributed throughout a number of layers of the population. Even the poor in Philadelphia and New York actually had it available to them in the poorhouse. What I'm going to do, because this roller has a certain level of grit to it, I'm going to change out the roller to one that's actually a little bit older. As you can see, it's been polished on this stone a little bit more, and it'll be like you would be changing out sandpaper to a finer grit. And you'll start to see it really liquefy even more here. Again, you can't rush it. Well, as we continue to grind here, the particles are getting smaller and smaller. And frankly, the intensity of the flavor is increasing too. To the extent that you wouldn't want to taste this right now without sugar, because it is very, very bitter. Chocolate is naturally bitter, which is why we like it with sugar. As a matter of fact, you can say chocolate is really defined by its sugar, whether it be bitter, sweet, semi-sweet. This would be called what we would call dark chocolate today. Now, you started the process, you saw me put dry cocoa nibs on here, and just because it's half fat and all this grinding is going to result in this liquid, we'll take and move it to this dish right here, and we'll start the whole process all over again with some more dry nibs. So let's get this on here. I don't know how much chocolate is here, probably 2 or 3 ounces, maybe 4. Probably enough to make a quart of a beverage or a pie. But while we let that cool off a little bit, we'll take some more nibs and put them on the stone. Well, in fact, we'll just take all these nibs and put them on the stone and start all over again. This is about the stage where we want to add some sugar to it. We'll put, for this batch of chocolate here, we probably have about 1.5 pounds. Just take some of the sugar that came out of this marble mortar right here and dust it on here like that and grind away. Now, the sugar will be incorporated into the chocolate. Actually, because of the particle size of the sugar itself, this will contribute to somewhat of a gritty chocolate feeling on your tongue, but eventually that would all get cooked out anyway. If you had this chocolate without sugar in it, you wouldn't think very much of it. But with the sugar in it, that's why we all like chocolate. Even in the modern world, you hear about semi-sweet and bittersweet. So Chocolate is really defined by its sugar, not the other way around. We can taste it to see if we have enough sugar, and this is what we call chocolate democracy around here. That's pretty good.